Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 16 of Spirit of Le Mans, the review series where I'm evaluating the upsides and downsides of each purpose-built Le Mans prototype on Gran Turismo 6. So, as you can see, this episode is featuring the 2005 version of the Audi R8 LMP. This is the Team Oreca-Playstation version. Now, the R8, as many of you will already know, was a hugely successful and completely, or virtually completely dominant Le Mans car in its time in the early 2000s. But this particular version, the Team Oreca, never actually won the Le Mans. So it tends to be overshadowed by the Infineon liveried silver with the red or yellow accenting version. So is it any good? It never won, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad car. Well, let's go to the track and find out. So, straight off the bat, I'm going to be completely honest about this car and about all of the Audis on this game. I'm sure there are those of you who absolutely love the Audi Le Mans cars, but I personally find all of them to be a bit too twitchy. Now, this car is not used by very many people, because as we said, it tends to be overshadowed by the silver version. But I was expecting this car to maybe handle a little bit better, because it actually weighs 50 kilos more than the 2001 version and has slightly less power, and I was hoping that that extra weight and lack of power was going to give it, a bit more stability, a bit more grip, and make it a bit kind of a softened down version. But it doesn't, unfortunately. The low speed handling isn't bad, but there is quite a strong tendency to wheel spin in this car. Now obviously reducing your power reduces that, but I mean, who wants to reduce your power? You want all the power you can get. So for low speed handling, I'm only going to give it a 4 out of 5, because like I said, it's not undrivable. It will give you a good lap. It's just not that great. Overall for city tracks as well, I'm going to give it a 4, because although it will give you a quick lap, it's not a particularly nice car to drive, or in my opinion anyway. For acceleration as well, I'm going to give it a 4, because it is quick, but it's not up there with the absolute best of them. So that's it overall for our initial city track test. Now let's go over to Ascari for our moderate speed technical track test. Now, as I just mentioned on the city track, this car has quite a strong tendency to wheel spin, and I was expecting this car to have handling that was quite clinical, quite German, not necessarily exciting, but gets the job done. But I was actually wrong, because the handling is actually not very good on this car, to be honest. 1 minute it goes quick and it goes well, and then the next minute it has understeer, then it has snap oversteer, and it's just not a nice experience overall, to me anyway. The handling overall is just too unpredictable on this car. Like I said, it will give you a good lap, so it's not a bad car. I just don't personally like driving it because the handling is just too unpredictable. Now the mid-range handling, again, I'm going to give it a 4, because like I said, it will give you a good lap. It's not completely undrivable, it's just not the best. And for brakes, I'm also going to give it a 4, and I'm surprised at that. I was hoping to give it a 5, but they're actually, again, not that great, to be honest. And I think that's partially due to the extra 50 kilos of weight that this car deals with. So overall on technical tracks, again, like with the city tracks, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, because it will give you quick laps, but it's nowhere near as good to drive as many of the other prototypes. It feels more like a workout driving this car. So that's it for our moderate speed technical track. Now let's finally go to our high speed track at Spa. Now, although, as we've said, the R8 doesn't fare particularly well on city or moderate speed technical tracks, it does actually drive pretty well on high speed tracks, especially here on Spa. It drives very, very well, actually. The lap time that it puts in isn't that great, to be honest. It's okay, but it's not that great, because as far as top speed, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, because the top speed is good, but it's not the best. But it is on these high-speed tracks that this particular version of the R8 fares the best. And for high-speed handling, I am actually going to give it a a 5 out of 5 because it is pretty good. The handling still has its flaws, but the high-speed handling is pretty good on this car. Now, for overall drivability, I'm only going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it's definitely not bad. As I said, it will give you a good lap time. But of all of the Le Mans prototypes, and especially of the LMPs, it is one of the most challenging to learn to drive and to get the best out of. And overall, for high-speed tracks, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 because although, as I've said, and as you can probably tell, I don't particularly like this car, it is pretty good on high-speed tracks. It will give you a good lap. The top speed's good enough to be competitive. The high-speed handling is fairly smooth, fairly predictable. So it is going to get a fairly redeeming 5 out of 5 for high-speed tracks. So that's it for our track testing of this car. So now let's go back to the garage for the final roundup of this car's best and worst attributes. So the overall verdict for this particular version of the R8 is it's definitely not a bad car. As I've said before, none of the prototypes are, strictly speaking, bad. They're all useful for something. And in the case of this car, it will, as I said in the video, give you good lap times on a wide variety of tracks. It's just that for my driving style, this car is a bit too unpredictable. 1 minute the handling is very good, it's very stable, very grippy, but then it kind of understeers, it becomes very heavy, and then when you try and correct it, it turns into snap oversteer, and you just end up all over the place. Now, I'm sure with the right driver and the right tuning, you could love this car, but for my style and with my preferred choices in my setups of cars, this car just doesn't suit my style. Now, as with all the cars, I would recommend that you give it a try, because who knows whether you may love the car. But for me, it's not a car that I use regularly. I would say that it's actually better to drive this car with restricted power and in a lower PP. It actually handles a lot better then. But obviously for the purpose of this series, that's not much of a redeeming feature because we're comparing all of the cars in their fully tuned state. So this car's best point, I would say, is that it will give you fast lap times, and it is a competitive car. But its downside is that the handling is very unpredictable. There's a lot of wheel spin, a lot of understeer, and a lot of snap oversteer. So yeah, that's definitely its worst point, or its weakest point. But as I said, as with all the prototypes, I would recommend that you at least try the car. And as usual, I'll be putting the ratings and lap times that this car achieved in the video description. And as always, thanks for watching.